Hello again, this is the 11th of April 2021. Today I'm going to do something which I haven't done before, which is do a request. Somebody asked me several weeks ago now actually, whether I could talk about relationships with autistic people, both romantic and friendships and family relationships. So I've had to think about it. I have already talked about sort of gender and sexuality, how we often don't really fit into the neurotypical model of, male, female, non-binary, or sort of gay, straight, bisexual sort of spectrum. There's the concept of Autie gender, and it hasn't really been specifically identified by professional researchers, but I personally believe, and several other people have confirmed this on unofficial platforms, support groups and stuff on Facebook, that there is an autisexuality as well. I'll say, I have said many times actually, not many of us are entirely cisgender or heterosexual. A lot of us fall onto the asexual spectrum, the agender spectrum, and that is, it does make things difficult in terms of finding romantic partners. You do end up with sort of very small pool of potential matches there, and also even a lot of people who sort of fall into your list of specifications aren't necessarily going to be interested in you. I mean, as someone who's sort of long identified as bisexual, I've had this quite often. I've sort of not necessarily pursued a relationship with, but sort of felt attracted to, connected with a woman who was not into other women. It's just one of those hazards of being bisexual, really. So there's this sort of perception among heterosexuals that bisexuals have, sort of double the number of people they could potentially date. They don't. It actually gets quite a lonely experience, because not just half the population aren't interested in women. It's also that a lot of people who would otherwise be interested in women aren't interested in bisexuals. There is a very specific biphobia. This idea that bisexual people are sort of inherently unfaithful, confused, putting it on for attention. I mean, this is all all things that people have thought about me personally, and actually said to my face. I think as well, it's the same problem happens to people who identify as pansexual or omnisexual, or any of the sort of various other iterations of anyone who isn't particularly into one individual gender. You do get this sort of overwhelming response of be weird. There is still this perception that even among people who aren't particularly homophobic, that you have to be either one way or the other. You know, anything else is some sort of confusion or having an experimental phase that's gone on for my whole adult life, you know. As well, there is a lot of asexuality and aromanticism amongst the autistic community, which again is very easily misunderstood. And the idea of being demisexual as well, I think you know that really does not get the sort of public attention it really deserves, because there are a lot of demisexuals around. You know, people who are, you know, not necessarily entirely asexual, but you know, don't really feel attraction as often or as strongly as you know you know that they are generally expected to. And some say they only actually feel attraction to someone after they have kind of befriended them and got to know them. And sort of formed a, you know, an emotional connection. Which I do think makes a lot of sense. I mean, speaking for me personally, you know, I think sort of part of my, you know, journey of self-discovery, you know, discovering that I am autistic, has also been about, you know, exploring these different perceptions of gender and sexuality, which I was sort of aware of, but I didn't actually sort of put any serious thought into how they could apply to me until I was, you know, reading about autistic traits, and kept coming up about kept coming upon these sort of descriptions of autigenderism and you know, the feelings of not necessarily feeling attraction to others in the way that you know, your neurotypical the neurotypical society expects you to, and is very much based on. And I wouldn't say I necessarily identify as being on the A spectrum, but it is something that I've been thinking about. And the thing is, I'm married now, so it is very much a moot point. But I do think, you know, am I demisexual? Maybe. And it is part of the, you know, a big part of the journey for me, a big part of the sort of thought process. As I've been self-diagnosing, it is something that I've been sort of prompted to read about and, you know, take a lot more seriously than I have in the past. And also to consider what attraction and, you know, romantic relationships mean to other people as well. Which isn't necessarily something that had been, you know, something that had any real importance to me. I think friendships for autistic people are quite intense, because we don't necessarily have a big circle of friends and acquaintances in the way that neurotypical people do. Maybe because we tend to be victims of bullying, of abuse, and generally feeling it like outsiders, you know, all through our childhoods, we do tend to cling to our friends. Quite often sort of see them through rose-coloured glasses as well. You do get very attached to people who you see as safe. I mean, the concept of the safe person is something that I've come upon several times as well in the in autistic discussions. It's you know, someone who you well do literally see as safe. You know, someone who is not going to pick on you and put you down and sort of treat you as a bit of a weirdo. You know, as so often happens. And you know, someone who is understanding, who can speak for you to some extent. You know, if you are non-verbal or agoraphobic or anything like that, it is sometimes necessary to have someone you can rely on to be helpful. And another thing that I've seen a lot of people, a lot of articles, a lot of sort of discussions on forums bringing up is the idea that, you know, although we often have anxiety issues, especially social anxiety, you know, we're often very shy. We do tend to get pushed to the front when anything needs to be done. You know, a few times I've been in some sort of group activity, you know, a works night out or anything, and been sort of nudged to the front when, you know, we need to place our order in the restaurant or whatever. And, you know, my colleagues be going there, oh, you go first, you're braver than us. And I still don't understand this, but as I say, it's something that's come up time and time again. I sort of find myself being protective of others. I don't know if it's the sort of pathological helpfulness that a lot of us have. Whether it's sort of ingrained in us as a child, you know, that we need to be considerate of others. You know, we get very used to being sort of pushed by our parents and teachers to try and, you know, raise our voices, speak louder, be more aware of others around us, that kind of thing. And this training comes into force when we're among shy people. Maybe it's kind of empathy, you know, with people who daren't do something. You know, because as children we had sort of phobias and an inability to speak for ourselves and things that, you know, maybe it's something that when doesn't bother us so much anymore as we've got older, but, you know, sort of remember feeling like that. I don't know, is this psychobabble? Sort of looking for the, you know, trying to help our child selves that were sort of timid and a bit helpless and afraid of things, and sort of, you know, nurturing our earlier self via these other people who need us to do something. Does this make sense, or is that just, or am I overthinking this? There is definitely a need to be helpful. We always sort of end up being the mum friend. I've seen a lot of autistic people, yeah, anecdotally. I don't know if there's any sort of official research into this, but certainly anecdotally, we do tend to end up being in caring roles. Not necessarily professionally, but certainly amongst family and friends, we end up sort of doing a lot of kind of emotional labour. Maybe we notice it more because that kind of thing is difficult for us. I don't know. Put your thoughts in the comments. I will just touch on abusive relationships. Skip this if that's not what you want to hear about. But it is clearly something that a lot of us fall into. Nearly always as victims. I've seen life expectancy for autistic people can be, I've seen a lot of figures, let's say. Anything from about 54 to early 60s. Simply because we tend to commit suicide, especially in our teens. Very high suicide rate, and also we are much more likely to be murdered than the general population. A lot of these are parents murdering their children. There's also quite a big problem with domestic violence. Why are we so often victims? Again, I think probably it goes back to, childhood, being bullied. We do tend to get bullied at school because we stand out. There are things we are very good at, things we are very bad at. Sort of behaviour that is not considered particularly cool or acceptable. Obviously, every autistic person has their own particular set of stims, of special interests, of sensory needs, and these can very often make us stand out from the crowd and look a bit weird, look a bit attention-seeking, and make us targets for bullying, as I have said in previous films. And these kind of things, they do stay with you throughout life. Once you get it in your head that you are unpopular, unlikable, that the only way you can befriend people is by masking to the max. Then it becomes a mindset that you keep for the rest of your life, and then these things do follow you into adulthood, into your romantic relationships, into your family relationships. You do sort of really take these things to heart, unless you have a cause to sit and examine them, and to sort of rebuild your self-esteem, your sense of self. You have the opportunity to realise your own true self, which not everybody does. And a lot of people really struggle with these things and sort of end up living their lives just kind of fawning to others. And it does it does lead people into very bad relationships. And when you are used to being constantly put down and told that everything you do is wrong, then if your romantic partner is also saying that to you, then You know, you're not going to see it as particularly remarkable, let's say. When your default setting is just to sort of watch what everyone else is doing and try and copy them, it doesn't lead to people having high self-esteem and healthy relationships of any kind. And as I say, autistic children are victims of abuse at a much higher rate than the general population. Often because the parents read these things online about cures and treatments and think, oh, I'll give that a go. I mean, it's ableism, you know. It's just pure and simple ableism. You know, they don't want a neurodiverse child, so they'll try and medicate us. They'll try and I've heard reports of children being sent for exorcisms because they were, you know, just doing perfectly healthy, normal autistic things. ABA is very big in America. I don't know what it's like, you know, in this country or elsewhere, but certainly in America, the done thing as soon as a child is identified as autistic is to send them for ABA, which is when a therapist, in the broadest sense of the word, comes to indoctrinate the child in neurotypicality. It was devised by the same doctor who created gay conversion therapy, which should be warning enough. Apparently, they originally used electric shock therapy. You know, they give the kids electric shocks until they did as they were told. Now they tend to do it through sort of withholding favourite objects. And it's just basically punishing children for doing autistic things. You know, for stimming, for talking about their special interests, for not holding eye contact or anything like that. You know, the child gets a punishment. I have talked to people who've been through it who say, you know, they've actually had PTSD from it because it is so intense and, you know, so extreme and, you know, so restrictive. They refer to it as adult bullying autistic or abuse of baby autistics. It actually stands for applied behavioural analysis. So the idea is the therapist studies the child's behaviour and works out, you know, their sort of likes and dislikes, and then uses that as reward or punishment for the undesirable behaviour. It's kind of pushed by groups such as Autism Speaks, who intend to eradicate us by any means necessary. But they call it curing. They'll cure us. Oh, wonderful. I'm cured of my personality. Anyway. Yes, there was. There've been a lot of cures pushed by various groups. Bleach enemas was a thing at one bit. A guy in America decided that the way to cure pretty much anything really, was to make homemade bleach and shove it up people's bums. I'm not sure what the rationale for that was, but yeah, it's apparently it's been quite popular as a something to do for autistic children. I don't know how many people this has happened to, what the results were, why their parents thought that was in any way convincing. Apparently he has actually been well, if not actually charged, then at least accused of murder, because a few people have died from this. I don't know all the details. Can't even remember his name, to be honest. But yeah, that was quite a big story at one bit. And of course, people who just don't realise that their child is autistic. Certainly a lot of individuals don't know they're autistic until they're sort of well into adulthood. And they're just seen as being difficult children. And were being punished for just for being awkward when they were having meltdowns or shutdowns or other common autistic reactions to loud noise, busy places, bright light, all the other things that we tend to dislike. And I think there is a perception as well that we are difficult to get along with. Certainly I have many friends who are, in some way neurodiverse. I personally don't find them any harder to get on with than anybody else. I think everybody has personality flaws and difficult habits that make them hard to live with. Certainly neurotypical people are a very mixed bag. That we all have personalities. We all have likes and dislikes. We all have some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. I think whatever your neurotype, you are going to find some people you like, some people you dislike, and some of them will like or dislike you, and it's all just a big melting pot of people having opinions on each other. And really, it's how your brain works is not a big part of that, as long as we can all have a reasonable understanding of each other. I think probably people find me a little bit less weird now that I am sort of open about being autistic, because I think they kind of see that there's a reason for why I do certain things. That maybe aren't considered good etiquette. It's very rare I actually go up to somebody and say hello. I tend to wait for them to say hello to me first. I don't know, there's some sort of legacy from, getting picked on at school as well. I sort of expect people to be hostile. I don't sort of feel confident to go up and approach somebody, maybe. or some sort of habit that came out of that. And certainly my mum always used to tell me off for that. You know, why don't you go up and say hello to those kids over there? They're from your school. I said, well, I don't know. They're talking to somebody else. I don't want to go and talk. I don't want to interrupt. I don't know. I don't know. That sort of makes my behaviour more understandable. Of course, that's just speaking for myself. I'm sure everyone has a different experience. Well, I'll leave it there. I will leave it there. Comment if you have anything to add. What are your own experiences? Is this right or wrong? As I say, I did do this by request. It's not really something that I was planning on doing myself. I am still interested in other people's feelings on the subject. So yes, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what you think, what your experiences in this field are. And I'll leave it there for now.